Welcome to episode 1 of our podcast. And today we'll be talking about missionaries, that field trip that you probably went on to view architecture or play fun little games like make candles. Well, today we will be telling you the true story of the missions and how it affected natives from their lives before, during, to after, and how they're still fighting for justice to be served today and be a self-run government like they used to be.
And then today we're joined by Mari, Bill, Jose, and myself, Luis.
Hey y'all, good morning.
Hello. So have you guys ever been on a mission? What's when you were kids?
Actually I have. But
What's it
I
like?
remember my main memory is the after effect of having to also do up your own mission, like a model of the mission you went to.
Mhm.
I know you also.
Yeah, I grew up in the Bay Area, so during my 4th grade field trip, I went to the Dolores mission here in San Francisco. And what I remember, and my memory's very rusty right now, but I do remember us making candles and us kind of reading about what priests and missionaries did on their day-to-day basis, but never learned about any of the other parties involved. What I mean by that is the Native American culture. And I also do remember being in kind of this church area where, depending if you were Catholic, you could pray with the priest that was working there at the time, or someone who was just working there in the facility. But me, since I didn't know anything, I was just I'll just be outside.
Cool. In my research of missions, I came across in our reading, We Are the Land, a doctrine called Requerimiento, which I believe is the start of the dehumanization process of the native people. And this doctrine, the Requerimiento, was meant to be read out loud before battle, signifying that through holy decree and by the Spanish crown that this land and the people within is under their rule. And history has it that it was read throughout the Americas, including as far down as the Mayans, into what is more relevant to our class is the Chuma people in the Tana Muwu. And in October 1542, Cabrillo took possession of the land by reading it out. And yeah, and I think that was pretty interesting that this could be seen as the first legal document appointed onto the native people that started the dehumanization process, because they seen that their religious practices were unholy, and they felt as if that their moral justification for taking over the land was to save their souls.
Mhm.
And subsequently that kind of religious ideology placed upon the Indians was kind of what started them to, I guess, subjugate them to a life of Christendom. And eventually we see that more of the Christian pull in evidence of missions. And I know you know a little bit about that, Jose, about the history of missions and what we can find in those.
Yeah, I remember that the first California mission to ever be instated was in San Diego de Acala, which was founded by a Franciscan priest father, Junipero Sierra, which it opened, or it was established in July 16th of 1769. And throughout that time, there would be missions across California, but the last mission that was known to be shut down, or the last existing mission that was shut down, was the mission in Sonoma, which was in November 3rd of 1834. So after 1834, there was no other missions that was in function, or there was a priest that was taking care of that mission. Usually, who lives in the missions? Well, obviously we know that there was a big number of groups of Native American communities throughout the whole California who would stay there. Not willingly, of course. I just want to make that clear that these Native Americans were not taken. They were taken, period. In the middle of the night, imagine, just picture that. You're sleeping at home with your family, and in the middle of the night, you get taken, and you're essentially moved into this really scary environment that is so far away from your community, and half of the time none of the family members are together. So if you're like a child at this time, you're still going to a mission no matter what. There was no obligation that you were going to be alone, or if you were going to be taken care of by a family member, because it was considered very religious, very cultural to be part with God in Catholic culture. But I think for the most part, my like big question that I had in the back of my head is like, what would go on in these missions, you know? And I just found out that there was a lot of work involved, like hard labor between both women, or not both, between all women, men, and children. I guess for a day-to-day life, what that would look like from Monday through Saturday, to be specific, is pure farm work. Well, for the men, to talk about specific roles, men usually were like blacksmith, farm workers, carpenters, just they were what we call vaqueros, which essentially are like cowboys. So they would work with a lot with the farm life, but the women, to be specific, would work or stay indoors and to work by making candles, weaving, cooking. But for children, they were asked to also get introduced to agriculture. So they would start helping the priest build more of that mission, kind of build off of it, if that makes sense. And that kind of like brings up to the question, why are we bringing children to like develop a mission? You know what I'm saying? Like that, I get very pressed about like talking about history that involved children like being maltreated, and because my great grandmother used to be in a not a concentration camp. She used to be part of the mission, and she, before she died, she would always tell me that that was probably the worst place that she could end up in, and she'd rather just stay home with her family. But I remember her telling me that the missionaries benefited so much from them, because depending if you were a guy, you would automatically be sent to like the closest military base without a hands down. Like there was no, if you were built for military, you were going to be a military person. And that just felt so wrong to me, being forced to do something that you don't want to do. And if you weren't complying, you would essentially get beat. If you're a woman, at times some priests would go, you know, like trigger warning, but like they would definitely rape the women. And which really leaves like a big hole in my heart.
I think the loss of humanity, like based by like from colonialization and like missions, is like, it's really long lasting, because it basically stole their culture. It indoctrinated them into the Catholic faith. And it not only the country we live in today, the founders, they stole their land. They not only took their land, they took their rights, they took their humanity even. But and like even today, like we go to a CSU, so like this is kind of pretty relevant. A lot of CSUs like have like Indian like Native American remains, and they have Native American like cultural belongings that they shouldn't have, and like so this really ties into like today. And like Ramos, he's a Native American representative on the assembly team, this California State Assembly, and he passed a bill in 2023 that would basically protect grave robbing of Native American peoples that have like ancestors that have died already, and I think that's really important. Though I have noted, though it's found that a lot of CSUs still haven't repatriated all the rightfully belonging to Native Americans. Another thing I think it's important to know is that like how does that affect us today, and like we talked about how the mission trips, when we went to them as kids, we were only taught the good things about them. We were never taught the bad things about them, or we were never like taught about how Native Americans were treated. We were just given a sugar-coated like idea, like the candles, or like this is how they sew their clothes. But we were never taught about an accurate representation of the effects of colonialism on the Native American people. And so I think an important thing today is, what can we do about it now? Like, it's already done. Like, we live in a country where we pushed out the Native Americans. Like, it's already done. We can't like go back in time and stop it. But I think something we can do for like, the best thing we can do is educate our future like generations an accurate representation of how Native Americans were treated, rather than like what we're teaching them right now. Because obviously when we went through school, we weren't taught this stuff, and that's why I think it's really important. Like Governor Ramos, like on these
You got it.
yeah, on the California State Assembly, like how he's passing a bill he passed a bill that ensures that when in California, when they're talking about missions and like Spanish missions in the state of California, and the gold rush, they also have to include the treatment of Native Americans, an accurate representation of that at least. And I think that's really positive for like us as a whole, and we need to know about this, or else like it's all in vain. And yeah, it's just
yeah, I feel like Native American culture should really be talked about more inside of schools. Like, I feel like missionary field trips aren't really needed, because I heard that like at missionaries, like a lot of natives died there, so it's basically like you're stepping on people's graves, and I feel like that's very like disrespectful. So I feel like I feel like missionary field trips shouldn't be a thing, but I do feel like Native culture and Native like things that happen to natives should be discussed in schools, because it's not discussed in schools a lot. Like, they take you to a missionary, they taught you like, oh, this is how they make their candles, not this is how they were forced to make candles, not this is how they were forced to make clothes for other people, or not this is how they were forced to pick crops from other people. They teach you like, oh, they did this on their own, and that's not really how it went. So yeah.
Good point. And before we wrap up, I wanted to mention another influential person that I found in my research, named Andrew Galvin, and Ohlone Bay Miwok, Plains Miwok, and Patwin Indian, who became the first curator of a mission, the mission of Dolores in San Francisco. And he is fighting for social justice now. And some of the main things that he would like to promote is better historical interpretations of the Native experience. And he also talks about how people sometimes misrepresent the natives as being a culture that's gone, but they're very much alive. And he wants to change the experience people have at missions by allowing cultural practices to be practiced there that were once native, as well as not charging natives to enter the building that their own family or ancestors built, as well as hire more individuals from local tribes to curate missions across the Californias. And with that, we would like to thank everybody for listening. This is the end of our first podcast, and have a great day.